This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Hello, Wondery Plus friends. Welcome to July's premium bonus episode of Sitting Down with Dr. Dan. Our producer and twin mom, Laura, is back with us, and we're answering 4 new listener questions on this episode. We love all the questions we get from you. We get so many wonderful questions. People are DMing us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you also can email us at podcast@drdanpeters.com. Anytime you have a question, we will read it. Laura, hello.
Hi, Dr. Dan. I'm so excited about our questions today. We cover a wide range of topics. But before we begin, I want to mention that this bonus episode drops on Tuesday, July 26th. And that date happens to be, appropriately, the 32nd anniversary of the signing of the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. And of course, July is also Disability Pride Month. So I wanted to just put a plug in. If you've not listened to 2 of our recent episodes that, really kind of spark conversations around these important topics concerning disability, ability, inclusion, and more, take a look at our regular episodes. And we have one with guest Mindy Henderson and another episode with Mickey Rowe. And both of them are just so terrific. They each have new books, and I couldn't think of better listens for Disability Pride Month.
Both so inspirational, such inspirational people.
Exactly. So with that being said, I did put out a call for information. I did use the hashtag for Disability Pride Month. And so question number 1 is, Dr. Dan, what do you think about therapy dogs? Can they really help children with disabilities, physical and or mental?
Yes, they can. And I've seen a lot of success with therapy dogs over the years for anxiety, for panic attack, for Tourette's, as companions for people with mobility issues. And, the therapeutic aspects of animals have been researched over and over and over again. If you put an animal in senior facilities or hospitals, there is a healing aspect of the connection between animal and human, particularly those that are trained to interact in a certain way. And I have seen it change lives. I think I have to mention these days, we see lots of dogs in lots of different places, and there's different names for these animals, service animals, companion animals. And so I think people have been confused with the different layers of which animals are legitimate and which animals are being used as a companion as opposed to a therapeutic intervention.
Mm-hmm.
They all can be helpful. I just think we have to be specific about if we're using an animal as a therapy dog. These dogs are specifically trained, months of training by specific specialists. And based on the area of disability that they're trained for, these dogs are taught to interact in certain ways and respond in different ways to their owners. So that's long end of it, but the short answer is yes, it can be very helpful.
That's great. And actually, it's sparking a few things I want to mention. So I have a former client in my book publishing world who has Usher syndrome, and she has a dog that she relies on. Usher syndrome is basically progressive blindness and deafness, I think. I'm not a doctor, so that's me sort of doing the layman or laywoman's terms. And then I also know people that are sort of doing therapy dog light. And by that, I mean, or service dog light, which is they've researched a dog that would be good for their family, for their child who's on the autism spectrum. So that's not super prescriptive, coming from a medical team, but knowing what breeds might work better with, just people's daily challenges. And then personally, I'd like to just mention that we have a border terrier, and our son, as you know, has special needs and in fact, Tourette syndrome, among other diagnoses. And our dog in the description says that, when specifically trained, this breed is great as a therapy dog. So, we didn't go that route, but we do see that our little guy responds really well to our son with special needs and can adjust his relationship accordingly. And then my last little thing I'm going to chuckle is because I think, having known you for many years, you're a cat person, Dr. Dan. So I want to be fair. I think there is magic in animals. So if you'd like to put in a little plug for cats, we don't want to.
Well, I was actually, you just triggered that when you were talking about your own family. I was thinking, so to specify, it's real funny to hear you. It's funny to hear you say, I'm a cat person. So I had to think about that. Okay, we have 2 cats now. Am I a cat person? I think I've become a cat person as a result of cycling through our last wonderful dog passing. And here's the reason. With our first of 2 cats, came to us at a request from one of our kids through a PowerPoint presentation. I'm allergic to cats, which is why for years we've never had cats. We had to give away our cats when I was a kid because of that. Aww. And so our one of our kids did a presentation on hypoallergenic cats, and so the first one we she's amazing, she's beautiful, and this particular child refers to the cat as the therapy animal. So it was very, it was partially meant as that when this cat came into our family, and it is 100% served that purpose over the years to be an amazing connection, calming force, and really have a therapeutic impact on not only this one child, but our entire family.
We're so lucky to have these animals in our lives and as part of our families. And speaking of even our larger podcast family, for our listeners that are also murderinos, you all are, always hearing about Karen and George's pets. And, there is like that thread through a lot of our shows and hosts that just appreciating animals and welcoming them into our family. So I love this question.
And then we ended up with a hairless cat, and that's a whole nother world and podcast on the Sphinx cat, the amazing adventures of Sphinx cats.
Yes. I think we might have to post some pictures of that cat.
I've seen that cat. Yeah, we can.
That might be cool for our feed.
Yes.
Hashtag Sphinx cat. So, okay. Anyway, so this second question, this one came in on email, and they asked no names or email addresses mentioned, please. And the question is, how do I talk to my middle school daughter about the abortion ban? And I know you just recorded an episode where this topic came up, or the abortion topic. So this is
we will be releasing soon. This is, of course, definitely a heavy one. So big picture, when there are big issues to talk about with our kids of any age, and we really want to be mindful of the age of the mind and spirit that we're talking to, it's often best to lead with a question as opposed to with our own information, our own perhaps energy or angst around many of the things that are going on in our world today. And so I would suggest something like, the first question is, hey, wondering if you heard about what happened with the Supreme Court and the Roe v. Wade abortion law protection. Now, granted, this has been going on for a few weeks, so likely they have. So I'm just taking it from the top here.
Right.
Then listening. And you're trying to get a sense of how much information might he or she know, how much is, in this case, she willing to, is she speaking with you about it? Does she seem open, or does she seem closed? And I think we have to be very sensitive to some of this information can be very emotionally overwhelming and can create a lot of fear. And so we need to dole it out, I think, in very specific and mindful doses. So for example, if your daughter is not saying much, say, well, here is a little bit about what happened, what this means, and I want you to know that you can talk to me about this at any time. Depending on, again, the response, if you think you can talk more, this is also, we want to decrease anxiety and fear. So we want to educate, but we also want to, talk about what this means, but also what it doesn't mean and what other options are and what state we live in. It also can lead to a very healthy and appropriate for this developmental time talk about contraceptive options, and the broader talk about intimacy, sexual exploration. So I feel it's just about, with all of these things, be real, but remember, you need it to be about your child and where they are more than your own place and where you are and the intensity and emotion that you would understandably might be feeling about this. And you tell me, what do you, I mean,
yeah,
you
I think that's really helpful.
with daughters,
as a mom, with I have a daughter in her late teens, and what struck me about this question was the middle school, because that is such a formative, difficult, growth-filled time. And this topic is, it's a really hot topic in terms of just, the emotions flare up around it from all sides of the table. And so I think your reminder, which is, from day one since I've known you until day, I don't know what we're on, which is to be age appropriate and to remember your child, has to kind of help lead that discussion. And, I have a 19-year-old, so she sort of came to me in a way that felt like we were peers, and, that we were sort of on the same page in many ways around it. But also she's bringing to the discussion things that a 19-year-old wants to talk about, as opposed to someone who's already had kids and has sort of seen a lot of things in my lifetime that are flipped upside down. And so I think when you plug that into the middle school mindset, it is to remember that particular discussion is less about you and more about your child, because you can save, the ranting and raving or crying or even feeling terrorized for your friends and your other adult family members. But that a middle school child really needs your guidance and is looking to you to feel safe and to have sort of put a pin on the map, like, how is this, what's this going to look like as I get older, and to know, okay, I can go to mom or dad and talk about this. So just bringing it back to kind of those basic fundamental signposts, it's like, it's about your child. Don't impose too much, let them lead. And as you've always said, especially during events that can be scary for, these young developing minds, that let them lead, because they're going to ask questions that they need answered. So,
exactly. And, I think a related sidebar, I just want to, this is very, very new and something I wasn't expecting. Right after Roe v. Wade was overturned, I got a check-in email from a client. I was going to, the parents of a college-age client who we were going to have a session with the following week. And the email said, hey, just heads up, we're having lots of discussions about vasectomies. And it totally caught me off guard that a 20-year-old would be talking about a vasectomy. And so we had that really interesting conversation. And then it came up with another 20-year-old client of mine. And then I saw in the news headlines about droves of men seeking vasectomies. And so it's just that this is such this decision to overturn Roe v. Wade is causing a ripple effect and questioning and protecting and getting ahead of things in many, many ways related to choice, body of choice, trying to protect from being in a situation where one would not have choices, being proactive, and impacting males as well.
That is intense. I'm kind of sitting here struck.
And I'm not saying in the same way. And I'm not comparing the male experience to what this means for the female experience in any way, shape, or form. I just was caught off guard that this was also part of the conversation or the ripple effect for this decision.
Again, I'm just saying word, that's really intense because you've had, you a career built on this practice and dealing with clients. And you said it perfectly, the ripple effect of this decision. And right. Yeah, it's affecting everyone. And certainly, wow, I'm just, that's
exactly.
kind of, that is just really intense and good for you for kind of being able to be that safe place for those discussions and also for the parents, to feel like this is a real issue for our child and our young adult. And to be able to kind of explore that. So I'm sitting here like, wow. And also just these young kiddos, these young adults, I mean, they're really having to navigate a lot of intense and I'm just going to say I can't think of a better word, but like these grown up serious issues, I mean, like they all are just coming out of the pandemic. It's not even over yet. And
the bind is these young people having to navigate things that we didn't, but also having to navigate them with brains that are still forming, like making adult decisions while they're still changing, not only psychologically, but physiologically, neurologically. And it's it's a tough balance.
It is. They're incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm constantly applauding these young adults who are growing up with a lot of things that we have never experienced. And, they're still smiling and putting one foot in front of the other, but last time I'll say it, but intense. I'm hoping the listeners are feeling this because this is real. This is happening right now. And, we have to face it head on. These are discussions and journeys that it's a marathon.
Yeah, it is. And to your point, there are a lot of resilient kids out there who are putting one foot in the other, smiling. And there are, as we've talked about, lots of kids that are really, really struggling and overwhelmed and disillusioned and feeling hopeless and helpless. So we're seeing all of it. And it's just, the stuff just keeps on coming. I know it's almost like I see my kids vacillate between being very energized, activated, and fired up to just kind of shrugging and becoming numb to everything that just keeps coming on a weekend, month in and out basis.
Sadly, I can relate. I feel like there is a fatigue that sometimes can be sort of pushed aside and then it kind of comes back again with just the load that they're all carrying. And so thank goodness for our show, for your practice and your work and the work of therapists, mental health professionals, and people that are, as adults and children, we can all turn to for support because there really is, we know it factually, a mental health crisis. And it was already there. It's now intensified because of what we're living through. But it is, I think, making more people seek out help, whether it's through listening to a show, reading books, starting therapy, using an app, you name it. So let's go on to our next question, which totally shifts gears. Question number 3, this came from a DM on Instagram. My high school teen is not having fun this summer. He's working a lot, getting ready for his first year of college. How can we help as his parents, or do we just let him figure things out on his own? He just doesn't seem his happy self. Kind of goes along with what we're saying. It's like the fun is over. It's time to grow up a little bit. And maybe that's how I read it. I don't know what you're getting from the question.
Think there's a lot of different ways to go with this question. On the one hand, I can imagine a lot of parents go, wow, I wish my teen rising college student was working really hard. Like where's the work ethic? Where's the motivation? Where's the what's up with all this entitlement stuff going on? So on the one hand, kudos. So, you have a hardworking person. I think the concern sounds like is he's not really seeming like himself. He's not having fun and there's a lot of life to live. I think I would start with trying to have a conversation. I noticed you're working really hard. Is this how you want to be spending your summer? Are there other things you want to do? Trying to get a sense of what's going on with friendships, if possible. And of course, you got to be delicate because these are emerging adults who are getting ready to go. A lot of times, the before leaving is very disharmonious. It's kind of like that there only can be, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of emotions. A lot of times people can only leave under sort of duress and stress because it's too hard to leave when everything's so wonderful. So I would just kind of want to get a sense of what might be going on you're a consultant at this point. You're a guide, which is another part of this good question, which is how much do we like get in there and how much do we let him do it on his own? And I would say it's not an all or none. It's a checking in. Hey, I noticed this. Hey, I'm just wondering if you want to take some time off and do something. I'm wondering, is everything okay? Mm-hmm. Are you wanting to see if you're friends more before you go? What are you thinking about college? So it could also be just a distraction. It could be, again, stress about leaving. So I would say ultimately, you're slowly letting out the rope as your kids go to junior, senior, and they're getting ready. They're turning 18, that they're going to college. You're slowly letting out the rope for them to be in charge of their own lives. We say take the wheel, literally and figuratively, of their own life. And you don't just want to drop them. And I think of what Dr. Ginsburg, we talk about him so much, Dr. Kenneth Ginsburg. We have 2 podcasts with him. His latest one, which his book is just coming out. Congratulations, you're having a teen. One of his greatest words of wisdom is there's 2 bad things to do with your teens. And here's the 2 bad things. One is back off and don't be involved in their life because you think they don't care. And 2 is to control and micromanage them. And so, of course, like everything, it's like, how do we get in the middle? And as they get older, be more of a consultant and guide so they can slowly learn to trust themselves and make their own decisions, not just make decisions based on in line with or in opposition to their parents.
That's excellent advice. And I think people do have these stigmas around parenting a teen, and forget it. That Dr. Ginsburg, opened my eyes even to some things that I hadn't thought about. And it doesn't mean kind of avoid and hands off. It's sort of like they just need you in a different way. And so that guiding role, just so that I'm noticing this, maybe I'm completely misreading it, but, and then you're kind of leaving that door ajar for another conversation or planting a little seed. And then suddenly the next week, you're seeing your son has made some time for the beach or is going to a movie with friends, and maybe here or there not taking a third or fourth, I don't know what the work situation is, but not saying yes to every work shift and figuring out, wait a minute, my parents are right. It's about balance. So there's a lot of layers of this. When I love how you kind of took it apart into different pieces, because when I first read it, I just thought, okay, sorry, but you have to, you're growing up and summer's not all fun and beaches. But now, upon sort of deeper examination, I realized, sure, it could tackle that, but it also, there are some other layers to it. So, all right, question number 4. I'm checking our time. Time for one more. And this one is, I don't know where it came in from. I think this was also an email, actually. Both sets of grandparents in our family always state that they want to spend more time with their grandchildren without us there. But both sets never initiate plans or follow up after suggesting this one-on-one time. What can we do as parents to help facilitate this? So funny.
That is. I love that. I think that's kids cute. Spending time with their grandparents without their parents is awesome for all parties involved, right? Parents, you get a break. That's what grandparents and our extra village people are for. Get a break. It's so critical for our kids to have relationships with other people besides us parents, to get other perspectives, to have other sorts of conversations, other sorts of go-to people for different things. And It might be that, of course, kids usually aren't the ones until they're much older to make any plans on their own. And for whatever reason, grandparents aren't taking the initiative, right? So they might be busy. They might have some other aging issues. Who knows? What I would say is facilitate. I would totally go for facilitation, unless you're concerned about those relationships. So, for example, related to the show, I've written some pieces for some articles about narcissistic grandparents, right? So, like, if you have a grandparent
True.
that you don't feel that your child is safe with, or that might experience some emotional volatility, some emotional abuse, like shame, not good stuff that you've experienced with these parents. In those cases, you are not facilitating. You are protecting and kind of detracting, and if you might not leave them alone. But that is fortunately more of a minority situation than a majority situation. So I would say facilitate, facilitate, facilitate. What do you think, Laura?
I agree. I'm nodding my head so much that my headphones are about to fly off. But yes, I was actually sitting here thinking, this question doesn't say the ages, but it's clear that it is, young enough kiddos that it's not coming, from the grandkids to sort of make these plans happen. And I was thinking, what about making it like a family calendar? I don't know, again, if the grandparents are media savvy, you could even go and do one of these like shared docs, like here's sort of some dates and times on a spreadsheet or a Google Calendar or something that look good. Here's when they have baseball practice or, their camp ends. And that's for summer. It feels like it's easier to maybe get a little routine going, because then when school starts again, you are dealing with madness and probably lots of schedules and moving parts, and it's not as easy. But I feel like summer, it's almost like maybe this is why this question even came through, that whoever wrote it wasn't maybe intentionally thinking this, but I feel like there is time to fill in the summer, and what better way to fill it than if it is sort of a safe, nurturing relationship with grandparents. Just make it happen. This one's interesting also because it says both sets of grandparents.
Right,
so
right.
The silly part of Laura, twin mom, is like, what are these kids like?
Yeah.
Are they like fresh? Are they sort of like giving everyone a run for their money, and the grandparents are not so sure they want to have?
We really want to spend alone time. Talk to you later. Yeah.
But in that case, for anyone listening, if and I truly celebrate every child, the ones with high energy, the fierce ones, the ones that, have their own drum beat they're listening to, is just like, you can figure it out. So maybe it's not grandkids plural. Maybe it's a real one-on-one. So not your 2 or 3 kids are going with that set of grandparents.
That's a good point.
Maybe it's, child A is getting picked up from their sports practice and getting an ice cream cone. Like, it doesn't have to be some huge thing where they're going to go spend a week with them.
Yes.
But it's interesting because, speaking of that, I have some friends that their parents, so the children's grandparents, from the time those kids were born, set it out that like every week in the summer, every month, I want 1 week in the summer, of having the kid come stay with me. And so even that, it's like you have to balance it for your own family. So
for sure,
I think facilitating also means, how does it fit into your nuclear family and your own plans, and what would work for you as a parent?
Yeah, and I think creativity. When I'm thinking back over, our kids are close to both sets of their grandparents. One set living very close, and another set living same state but plane ride away.
Okay,
and there's just different creative ways. So I think about people who have to travel. I remember there was one time that I believe my mom flew up to get one of our kids or 2
Aww.
and fly them back down. And then when they got older, they would fly down by themselves with the escort, waiting on both sides and that sort of thing. I think of other families I know of where, if your families are cross country or, a few states away, you can also fly out with the kids, and then you and spouse, or you alone, whomever, go and do something else for a week. It's your week away, but you still find a way to get them there. So I just think creativity. And these relationships are so important. So important.
Yeah, I want to just sort of echo that, because the relationships with grandparents are so rich. There's so much that children can get out of, that part of their family. And just even, I'm smiling even just hearing about, accompanying on a flight, and then the kids learning, how to be independent and to do it with a grandparent on the other side of whether it's the train or the airplane. It's kind of a cool part of growing up that I do think will stay with children as they get older. And, we're lucky our children have wonderful relationships with their grandparents. And, in particular, my parents, because we have twins, we needed them so desperately, especially in the very beginning. And they were the first grandkids, so they had more time, but they were in a relationship with our twins from day one. And that has grown so beautifully over the years. And so I just think, to end on this question, I'm doing it with a smile, because I think, okay, the intention is there within this family to, sort of get generations together, figure stuff out. And with facilitating and creativity, it's a really special relationship that I think everyone will cherish. So
make it happen.
Yes.
Make it happen.
That's all I have for you today, Dr. Dan.
All right, Laura.
But I told you we were covering a lot.
We covered a lot of
very different topics today.
Yeah.
So thank you for always teaching me and our wonderful subscriber listeners, and then on our regular show as well.
I love these
Dr.
discussions.
Dan's magic.
Love these discussions with you and Phil. And for everyone listening, we are just like you. We are living in the trenches, trying to grow, trying to learn, and trying to do our best in this very unique world we live in. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening today. As you know, you can subscribe on the Wondery app to hear all of our bonus episodes and our podcast ad-free. Thank you for listening to our weekly show, Parent Footprint with Dr. Dan. We drop a new show every Thursday. Please continue to follow us at Parent Footprint Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter at Dr. Dan Peters. Our website, drdanpeters.com. Continue to please rate, review, and subscribe. Give us those 5-star reviews, which you do so well. And remember to ask yourself the guiding question: what footprint do you want to leave? This has been a Peters and Rossi production. Parent Footprint with Dr. Dan is produced by Laura Rossi. Our engineer is Phil Rossi. Theme music is Mountain Spring High, composed and performed by Gabriel Lewis. Artwork is by Garrett Ross. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Parent Footprint Podcast, and on Twitter at Dr. Dan Peters. For more information, go to exactlyrightmedia.com.